Hey, what's up? Today, I'm gonna show you guys how to make a quick, fresh, and aggressively flavorful Thai-style green curry at home that only takes about 25 minutes start to finish. This is weeknighting. To get started, I'm going to show you guys how to make your own green curry paste from scratch. To do that, I'll grab my food processor and then grab a big knob of fresh ginger. To make it a little easier on my food processor, I'm going to cut the coarse fibrous ginger down into thin slices. And as you guys know, I generally don't peel my ginger if it's going to get broken down into a fine paste. In total, I'll add in 30 grams of ginger, then in goes 30 grams of chopped fresh lemongrass. If you can't find lemongrass at your store, just sub in some extra ginger, then 30 grams of peeled shallot or red onion, and 30 grams of fresh garlic. I'll mention that I'm using store-bought pre-peeled versions of both shallots and garlic, and I'm not ashamed about it. The quality is definitely good enough, and the $3 or $4 is totally worth spending as long as you cook a lot and use them within about 6 to 7 days. Next, in goes 30 grams of fresh jalapeno and 30 grams of fresh green bell pepper. By the way, green bell isn't authentically Thai as far as I know, but it does tame the heat of this paste a little bit while also bringing the same moisture and green color that a jalapeno would. Sub the 30 grams of bell peppers for more jalapenos or serrano chilies if you're a tough guy. Chili head. Next, I'll add in the zest of 2 whole limes. I just ripped that off with my microplane. Then in goes 3 grams of cumin, 3 grams of coriander, 1 to 2 grams of turmeric, 5 grams of salt, and then 3 grams of white pepper. Regular cracked black pepper can work here, but it'll leave your curry looking a little speckled. Lastly, in goes 30 grams of fresh cilantro. Then the lid goes on and I'll spin this all together until I get a fine paste. After 30 seconds of spinning, this paste has been pushed up the sides of the jar, so I'll jump back in with the spatula to scrape it down so it can be gripped by the blades again. And by the way, at this point, the paste looks a little bit too coarse and rustico for my taste, so I'll keep on spinning. I'll give it another 30 seconds or so until I've got it pulped into a relatively homogeneous paste like this. I'll mention that this fresh curry paste is a touch wetter than store-bought, and that's on purpose. I added extra pepper and cilantro to bring some additional moisture so that it would spin freely in a food processor. If it was too dry, everything would just stick to the sides and it wouldn't spin into a paste. Obviously, in Thailand, they're probably not using food processors to make their curry paste. Instead, I think it's more traditional to use a mortar and pestle. And while that's an amazing way to open up the flavor of the aromatics, it's also a ton of work. I think most people can bust out their own version of this curry paste in about 10 minutes with the food processor, so I think that making your own is super worth giving a try. But in my opinion, there's zero shame in using store-bought curry paste. It's obviously going to be pretty different from fresh, but it's good in its own way, and I'm certain that a lot of Thai people and a lot of Thai restaurants use pre-made curry pastes. For context, here's a nice store-bought version next to the fresh one that we just made. Obviously, they smell pretty different. This one smells darker and this one smells a lot brighter and greener, almost like a fresh salsa. This has shrimp paste in it too, so it smells quite fishy, and I can just tell from smelling it that it's gonna be pretty ginger forward and salty. Ooh. On the other hand, this one is significantly less salty, so you can really up the amount of aromatics in your curry. More ginger, more lemongrass, more garlic, more shallot, all the stuff that you want it to taste like. Today, I'm using the fresh paste because I think it's exceptionally delicious and very worth the 10 minutes of extra work. For now, I'm gonna scoop my paste out of the way so I can quickly sort out the protein for this curry. For that, I've got a 1.5 pound fillet of black cod, also known as sablefish. I've eaten a lot of green curry in Thai restaurants with fish in it, and I personally think it's the best protein for this dish. But of course, chicken will serve as a great sub if you're not super pro fish like I am. I'd recommend using 1 pound of boneless, skinless chicken thighs if that's the route you decide to go. The cook time in the process will be exactly the same as it is for the fish. If you haven't heard of sablefish or black cod, for me, it's like the poor man's Chilean sea bass. It's super buttery and tender, but the flesh is also firm and stays together after being cooked. By the way, I don't like cod for this dish because it's way too flaky and will break into like 10,000 pieces when you stir the curry, and halibut is generally just too expensive. But an alternative that I think would work for most people is tilapia. Yes, the flavor is pretty mild, but the price is right. So if you're still learning to love fish, I think tilapia would be a good option. To get this fillet ready for the pot, I'm going to use my bendy, thin boning knife and then cut the skin starting at the tail end and working my way towards the head end while keeping my knife flat against my cutting board and pulling the skin taut to keep the blade at the leading edge of the flesh and the skin. Once I've got the skin removed, I'll need to remove the bones that run down the middle of this fish. There's a lot of them in there, and removing them with tweezers like I would for salmon is not really an option, especially on a weeknight. So I'll zip out about a ½ inch of the entire center line of this fish. Then next I'll slice each half into 2 strips and then cut those 4 strips into nice 3/4 inch cubes. By the way, I think this angle shows the texture of this sablefish really well. It's both soft and tender, but still firm. It's really beautiful. Lastly, I'll add a strong pinch of salt to all this cubed up fish and toss it to combine. This is going to season the flesh a little bit, making it that much more delicious and less reliant on the flavorful sauce to do all the heavy lifting. Next, I'm going to grab my cooking vessel for this dish. I'm using a Dutch oven, but a 12 or 14 inch deep nonstick pan would also work. I'll preheat this over medium-high heat, then quickly prep the vegetables for this curry. First up is eggplant. This is a Japanese style eggplant, and I think it's generally good for people who don't like eggplant, like me. It's less bitter and has a lower water content than the stuff you would normally see, so that means it gets less mushy when you cook it. To prep it, I'm just losing the top, then peeling off about half of the outer skin. That skin is tough, but we want a little bit of it still attached to counter the soft, creamy interior flesh once it's cooked. In total, I need 200 grams of diced eggplant, and of course, if you can't find Japanese, a large black conventional variety would work fine. Lastly, I'll cut some fresh green beans. I like these in the curry because they don't overpower the buttery fish or the flavorful curry broth, but they do bring some nice vegetable flavor and a little bit of snap that breathes some additional life into the dish. Now, before I start the very rapid fire cooking process of this dish, I need to get a pot of rice in the cooker. I generally go for 300 grams of rinsed Thai jasmine rice, 400 grams of water, and then a strong pinch of salt. And that's it. I'll stir to combine, hit the white rice button, and then thank Seed for sponsoring this video. One of the weird side effects of cooking hyper-palatable food on the internet is that you become acutely aware of your gut health. Regardless, I've done a lot of research on probiotics to try and find something that can support my overall digestive health and the other systems in my body. After lots of reading, my research has led me to Seed's DS-01 Daily Synbiotic, which is a broad spectrum probiotic plus prebiotic for adults. I went with it because all 24 strains of the bacteria that they use are either clinically or scientifically studied, and you can read a lot more about those in depth on their website. And probably most importantly, their capsule within a capsule via cap delivery make sure that those strains survive the acid, enzymes, moisture, and heat of your stomach so that they can actually be effective in your body. The first order comes in this refillable glass jar with a travel vial and ships to you in all sustainable packaging. After that, refills come in a compostable, safe biofilm pouch with a dissolvable barrier made from corn. So to try Seed, use code Brian at seed.com/Brian for 15% off your first month's supply of DS-01. Back at the stove, I've got a hot pot. So in goes a heaping tablespoon of coconut oil, though regular high smoke point oil would also work. Then in goes all of my green curry paste. A quick stir to get that spread out, and I'll cook this on high-ish heat for about 60 to 90 seconds to get the aromatics opened up and slightly fried off. Around the 1 minute mark or so, the paste is going to start to grip the bottom of the pot a little bit, so I'll scrape that up with a wooden spoon to keep things loose and to keep things from burning. Next, in goes 2 cans of full-fat coconut milk. As you can see, this stuff is pretty freaking thick. It's almost like coconut cream, actually, and I think it brings a really nice body and luxurious mouthfeel to the dish overall. I'll stir to get that combined and then bring it all up to a simmer. I'll give that 2 to 3 minutes of cook time now to soften the fibrous aromatics in the curry paste and to round up just a little bit of that almost aggressively fresh green flavor. 2 to 3 minutes later, I'm going to add in some very optional complexity. I'm going to drop in my immersion blender and spin this up for about 15 to 20 seconds to break down the aromatics and little green flecks of cilantro. The food processor did do a really good job of pulping everything down, but this added step of pureeing is going to make the sauce just a little bit more smooth and a little bit more pro. Feel free to skip this though, the flavor is going to be exactly the same. It's mainly a textural thing. Next, I'll add in 20 grams of brown sugar and then 30 grams of fish sauce to season up this broth. Together, this salty sweet combination is going to elevate the pungent spice and aromatic edge in the paste while also bringing some balance to the fat from the coconut milk. Once that's all stirred in, I'm going to add in all of my chopped green beans, then all of my eggplant. I'll stir those to get them saucy real quick, and as soon as the coconut broth is up to a low simmer, I'll pop a lid on and cook them for about 3 minutes. 3 minutes later, the eggplant and green beans are about 60 to 75% cooked and still have a little bit of snappy texture. Any more done than this and they're gonna get mushy before we're done cooking the fish. Speaking of that, next I'll add in all of my diced and salted fish meat, or chicken, if that's your truth. I'll gently stir that in to make sure it's fully submerged, then I'll pop on a lid and lower the heat to low so that I can very, very gently poach this for about 3 more minutes. 3 minutes later, when I come back, you can see this fish is now nice and opaque and has been gently cooked throughout. Texturally, the eggplant and green beans are just on the edge of fully tender, but each one still holds on to just a little bit of snap to keep them fresh and vibrant as opposed to mushy and just blah. To serve this, I'll drop down some of my fresh aromatic jasmine rice into a shallow bowl, and then I'll top that with about 1/4 of the green curry. By the way, this recipe should yield just about 4 nice-sized adult portions. To finish, I'll give this dish a little squeezer of fresh lime juice to bring some acidity and to balance the rich creaminess, and then a few leaves of fresh Thai basil to bring a totally raw, fresh herbal edge. And there we go, an insanely flavorful, vibrant, punchy green curry. The fish is tender and buttery, and surprisingly the eggplant in there is also very delicious. It's creamy and almost custardy, but still has its own structure. This dish is a literal explosion of intensity, and whether you make your own curry paste or not, it's gonna be sick. I hope you try it soon. Let's eat this thing.